Okay, so there's a new draft bill on the table, the Combatting Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill 2026. Today, we're going to dive into a detailed legal analysis of this bill, one that warns of some pretty profound risks to our legal system.
All right, first things first, let's be clear. The report we're looking at absolutely acknowledges that the goal behind this bill is legitimate and, really important. It's trying to tackle two very real threats, anti-Semitism and violent extremism. And look, nobody's arguing that these aren't serious issues that need to be addressed. But here's the big question the report poses, and it's a critical one. In the attempt to solve one problem, does this bill actually end up creating an even bigger one? And according to this deep dive legal analysis, the answer seems to be a resounding yes.
So let's just cut right to the chase. What's the main conclusion of the report? The headline finding is that this bill is a massive overreach of executive power, and it goes way, way beyond its stated goals.
And this quote from the report really just nails the core critique. The argument is that the bill basically collapses everything. Actual violence, hate speech, who you associate with, what you believe, even simples, and crams it all into one single system of punishment. It lumps everything together, but, and this is key, without the necessary legal checks and balances.
To put a number on it, the analysis identified 27, not one or two, but 27 specific concrete red flags. And we're not talking about minor typos or small drafting issues here. We're talking about significant legal and structural problems that really go to the very heart of what this bill is trying to do.
Okay, so let's dig into the first huge red flag, which the report calls out as being legally fatal. The bill gives the government a ton of power, but at the exact same time, it strips away the very processes that are designed to keep that power in check.
And at the heart of this is a concept called procedural fairness, sometimes known as natural justice. It's like a fundamental building block of our legal system. It just means you have the right to be heard before a decision is made that's going to affect you. You get to see the case against you, and you get a chance to respond. Simple as that.
Now, this is where things get really serious. The report finds that this bill doesn't just, weaken this right. It explicitly and deliberately removes it for some of its most powerful measures. The report actually calls this step unusual and extreme in Australian law. That's a huge statement. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, a government minister can basically by themselves decide that a group is a hate group. They don't need a court to agree. They don't even need a criminal charge. And because that procedural fairness bit has been removed, they don't have to give the group a hearing. The decision is just made, and the consequences follow, all without that group ever getting a chance to defend itself.
All right, let's move on to the second critical red flag, because this really builds on the first one. The report finds that the bill makes a fundamental shift in what our law focuses on, moving away from punishing criminal actions to punishing a person's status and their beliefs.
And this slide lays it out perfectly. Traditionally, our legal system is all about conduct. It focuses on what you do, things like violence or inciting violence. But this bill shifts the goalposts. Suddenly, the basis for legal trouble becomes your status, who you are, what groups you're a part of, who you've met with, or maybe something you said years ago. And here's how that actually plays out in the real world. You could face criminal charges just for being a member of a group that a minister put on a list, even if you personally never did anything illegal. Your visa could be canceled because of something you said in the past. And this one is huge. The bill often flips the burden of proof. So it's no longer up to the government to prove you're a threat. It's now up to you to prove that you've disengaged. And that could be tough, especially when association might be defined as just a single meeting. So you add all this up, what's the bottom line? What's the final assessment here? The report concludes that this bill doesn't just have a few flaws, it actually puts our entire legal and democratic system at risk. I mean, just look at this risk heat map, which we've adapted from the report. It is stark. Those core issues we've just talked about, stripping away procedural fairness, letting a minister ban groups, the belief-based sanctions, they are all rated at the highest possible level of risk. The report itself calls these flaws legally fatal. And that really gets to the heart of it. The report's conclusion is that this isn't just a simple reform bill. No, this is a fundamental structural expansion of state security power, pushing it into areas of speech, belief, and association, and it's doing it without the basic safeguards you absolutely need to protect a liberal democracy.
So what happens if this thing passes as it's written? Well, the report predicts 3 big outcomes are pretty much guaranteed. First, it's highly likely to face successful legal challenges. Second, there's a serious risk that these massive powers could be used for political reasons.
And third, all of this could lead to a major erosion of public trust in the whole legal system.
Okay, so all of this brings us to the big final question that the report tackles head-on. A bill with this many serious problems, can it be fixed, or is it just fundamentally broken?
And the analysis makes a really important distinction here. Some flaws, it says, are amendable. You can rewrite a vague definition or you can tweak the burden of proof. But other flaws are described as basically irreparable. Things like completely removing procedural fairness, criminalizing what someone believes, and allowing a minister, not a court, to hand out punishment. These aren't just details you can edit. They are the core architecture of the entire bill. They're the foundation. And that's the bottom line, really. The report concludes that these architectural flaws, this foundation, is so profoundly broken that it can't be fixed without just tearing down the bill's entire design and starting over. So the final question it leaves us wrestling with is this. Is the important goal of fighting hate really best served by a tool that, according to this analysis, may be broken beyond all repair?